My name's Eric Kelley, also known as OneGuy. I am a software developer by day and game developer by night, as like I like to say. I handle or lead all of the web design projects at my day job, and that is a commercial facing dental plan as well as how would I describe municipality based dental plans as well.
How do you do, like, the whole day job and then come home and then sit down and be like, "All right, time to open up the
Right,
indie
right.
game and work on that."
My I'm pretty thankful and lucky with my current day job. I'm working completely remote right now. Is I get my tasks done and I put in the work throughout the day. My company doesn't really care when I do that work. I find it much more easy to balance the two when I can wake up in the morning at 8 or whatever and do a few hours of regular day job stuff. And then if I need to have a random meeting for the game, I can do that throughout the day and then just keep kind of mix and matching.
But what about, like, just the sheer energy?
Oh, lots of
Like,
coffee. I try to get
okay,
to
lots
bed,
of coffee.
pretty early. A lot of people like to be proud about how late they stay up and all that, but I try to get to bed by 10 or 11 usually, which is still probably considered late to some people, but and then I'm a big proponent of getting your sleep in. Like, if your sleep is messed up and you're only getting, like, 2 hours of sleep a night, you are not gonna be mentally or physically productive that entire day.
How do you not get trapped into, like, "Hey, there's a Twitch streamer on,
Mhm.
I'm just gonna pull that up," and then, like, 3 hours pass, and you're
Right.
like, "Oh my god."
I used to get very distracted by just being like, "Oh, screw it, I'll just pull up a stream or a YouTube video or something like that." Funnily enough, I ended up with 2 ultra wide monitors, and so that really opened up my screen real estate. Whatever media content I'm trying to watch or listen to or whatever, just like on the far left side, it's like I gotta physically move my body to go look at that, and I found that has helped me.
Why not stream the journey yourself?
So I'm not right now. I find that I'm very, very quiet when I'm working. So if I get working on a project, I will kind of get tunnel visioned on it. I tried streaming, I don't know, probably the beginning of this year. I find I didn't engage with the chat enough to make it feel like I'm providing value to them at all.
I sometimes almost feel like you have to, like, have, like, a secret
Mhm.
channel
Right.
where you, like, you stream, but not for the audience. It's literally selfishly only for yourself to document it, so
Right.
later that you have the clips and you're like, "Man, this was a day when,"
There's
you
many
know,
times where I agree.
I was listening to some it was probably Gary Vaynerchuk on some motivational loop
Yeah.
playlist that I have, and it just sort of, like, something was said and it just, like, clicked. And I remember taking out my phone and literally recording me because I was like, This is a moment."
Mhm.
And I just remember recording myself, telling myself, like, "This is the moment. Like, you're gonna look back at this. This is what happens. This is why we're doing this."
Right. Kind of rolling off of that documentation thing. We've started as a team in 2021 using Notion kind of as our backbone
Mhm.
for we spent the first half of 2021 importing all of that into Notion, and we found extreme success with sharing with our other teammates, and then just the flow of getting more and more information and encouraging more and more like jotting down of notes and things like that. Wanted to bring that up just because it was something that we didn't expect to be as influential as it was. We were using basically just Dropbox and Google Drive documents,
Yep.
and it worked for what it was, but as the game grew out of like this super simple thing and started expanding, we hiring all these different people. We really needed a consolidated, organized knowledge base almost of every last thing. And so that's just been a huge, huge boon for us being able to share like individual pages, things like that. It's just been fantastic.
And this is a great spot to segue to our sponsor. No, there's no sponsor.
But yeah,
For your free trial of
right.
Notion, go to notion.co/oneguy.
But yeah,
That doesn't exist.
I just wanted to mention it's just it was it's unconventional for like what we needed to do because we have Clubhouse, or I think it's called Shortcut now, for our project management, like overall project management, and that's been fantastic. But the supplemental aspect of like a knowledge base was huge in onboarding like new people. So if we hire a new artist or a new programmer and they need to get up to speed with the art style or code style or whatever we're hiring them for, it makes it super easy just to be able to share one page and any sub pages inside of it.
Coming from like enterprise and just
Mhm,
larger companies, and like you take for granted the systems and process in place.
mhm,
When you're a much smaller company, it's like or even large company, it's like these tools in place, and if they're properly used, can really propel
right,
like, and sometimes the smallest tool can make significant impact. Like
absolutely.
you're talking about Notion, but for me, like doing the video editing, there's a tool called Descript,
Mhm,
and I was using Adobe Premiere myself before that. It does
mhm,
everything. What I need is like a very convenient, good UI for the subset that covers 99% of the case.
exactly.
Canva,
Yeah,
I think a lot of people
mhm,
recognize. Adobe Photoshop does way more.
right.
But for me, I don't even use that anymore.
Mhm,
All my stuff is in Canva. Like it's just browser based. It's very easy.
right.
It's very convenient. And like the workflow time is just reduced so much.
It's interesting you say that
Yeah, go
because
ahead.
I found the same experience with slightly different tool, Figma, just for like my different designs. I've basically ditched Photoshop 90% of my usage of Photoshop for Figma, just because it's so like those web tools that are just so easily accessible. I can't beat them nowadays.
You go to work, you put on your dev hat,
Mhm,
you're like, "Cool, I write my code."
yep,
And now at night, you go and you're like, "Should I be working on the landing page? Should I be working on marketing?
right.
Should I be collaborating with team people?" Like, how do you juggle this?
It's kind of like the startup mentality of like you wear many hats, right? Because like I don't know if during the day, like what I'll be doing. Like when I'm done with work and I
Mhm.
need to start doing stuff for the game studio or the Neo Interactive, the studio itself. It's kind of a crapshoot what I'll be doing. Sometimes I'll be inside of Printful managing templates and customers inside of there for merchandise orders and things like that. It might be working on that front end. It might be talking with the back end guys who needs me to spin up a new AWS server or something like that. So it really varies depending on the day, but I'd say mostly I start off by just taking a look at we have a developer Discord where we
Yep.
just ask everybody on the team if they're doing any updates on something or need feedback that they just post in there, and so there's always new messages to read and then catch up on. So I guess at the bare minimum every day I go through Discord, make sure everything's on the up and up, nobody's freaking out about anything. I'll usually open up VS Code and then start
Yep.
fumbling around with one of our front end projects.
Has there been any major shifts as, like, you caught yourself being like, "Oh, normally as a dev, I would say we should do it this
Mhm.
way, but now that I'm putting on, like, my business hat."
A decent example of that is the programming. So we have three core programmers, and then we have one team that we hire in externally for supplemental help. And that can turn very, I don't know, you've seen how like different teams approach the same code base and things can get ugly kind of quick of just like refactoring things of the other team's code. And so, but this is the first time I was from the perspective of the management looking at these two teams who are like, no, this guy's code is trash. And like, no, this guy's code is trash. And so I think that was, I don't know how to explain it other than I was kind of frustrating, but also eye opening at the same time. And I found the only way that we got around that, and because this was going on for a few weeks, and at some point we were just like, I'm done hearing about this, constant bickering back and forth. And we just got him in a call together and made them figure their shit out.
Didn't have time to implement, like, whatever multiplayer perfectly. There's some edge cases where it just drops some unknown frames and, like, you're like, "Ship it.
Right.
We don't have the time anymore." Like,
Well, even in our prototype, was we had a prototype weekend and we had, several hundred players play. And the way the matchmaking or the server browser worked, let me correct that, was as soon as, because it was just 1v1 games. And so only two players could connect
Mhm.
to a server at a time. And as soon as two players were connected, we had a little bit of code that would just hide the server from the server list. But people found out that the way we actually implemented it for some reason, I don't remember exactly why, but instead of just kind of deleting the element from the server browser, we just kind of slid it down to the bottom and then it was hidden at the bottom. And so people found out you could like click below, like there's like a table of all the listed servers, but if you click
Yeah.
below the table, that's still another table row of a server that's
Oh,
filled,
okay.
and then they would just join the game in the middle of the match, and then that would crash everybody involved. As soon as
Ye
you're developing something day in and day out, you're gonna kind of gloss over some things, and you don't act like a regular user at that point, right? Like you built the thing, so you know exactly how it's supposed to work. It's not until you get those other like random people just trying out your project to do QA.
Actually, just before this was watching, it was a TikTok video. They got kids who are, I think, 10, 12, and 13 today, and they're at a house with a rotary phone, and they're like, "Call home."
Oh,
And the
geez.
way that they try to use a rotary
Like, try
phone
to dial a number and all that.
is no, like, one kid is looking underneath the phone thinking like there's a
Right.
touchpad or a screen that will come out, and, like, they don't know what the little, receiver's for, and, like, they know that the dial thing turns,
Right.
but they don't understand, like, a finger from that
To
number to
spin
the
it around,
middle.
yep.
Did you guys release? And then, like, "Oh god, it crashed all the time, the servers
Mhm.
were overwhelmed," and, like, panic mode fires.
We actually didn't use dedicated servers. We had the functionality built out and running, like, in our dev environment. We ended up not doing that for that first weekend. And so we ended up with a peer-to-peer connection. We didn't have any, like, massive outages or anything weird like that. We didn't hear about any, hacking or anything like that. But it was obviously, like, a very small, group of people who were very interested in the game kinda thing. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Alright, I'll
yeah.
end.
Woo.
Ta-da! Well